Yes, I'm a physio and fit as a physio. These are some taping techniques I use to prevent and treat injuries.
Yeah, so mainly we're going to strap for stability, subluxations, dislocations, maybe AC injuries. So again, my background's more rugby, so we're looking at joint instability, shoulders that sublux or pop out in contact. Now, rugby-wise, there's obviously a number of positions. So for me, it depends on their position, on how I'm going to strap their shoulder. So if they're a back, playing position. If they're a back that just needs to be able to tackle effectively, I can pretty much go heavy and strap them down in this position because they don't need to technically get their arms up too often above their head. But if they're a forward that's jumping in the line out, they've got to get their arms up here. If I strap him here, he's probably not going to get past here to get his arms up. So you've really got to take into account what they're doing in their sport, what position they're playing, and what's their role while they're playing, and where you strap them. Also, how unstable they are. So if he's a really lax shoulder that pops out, if I do that and his shoulder pops out, then I'm really locking him up either really anteriorly or really forward rather than keeping it nice and loose. So again, question the patient on their history. If you know what it is, great. And then how tight they like their shoulders to be, how locked in they like to be. So there's a few ways of doing your shoulder. You can see his ACs are fairly prominent. Have you had any AC troubles before?
Nope.
So if I didn't know his history, I would have thought he might have done something to his ACs because they're pretty prominent, they're pretty bony. So hence I'm going to do a little bit of a padding as well at the same time for his shoulder. I wouldn't do this normally for every person, but for a comfort thing, but also if you have had an AC injury, a little bit of padding over the AC helps, just to give them a bit more protection and comfort. So for most shoulders, I'll use a 50, mainly because they're fairly big boys, and in rugby-wise, 50 is going to go a little bit better than 38s, but you can use the 38. Just flex your bicep a little bit.
Yeah, there we go. A little bit.
So just get them to flex there a little bit, just to make sure you're not really locking them off. Careful with blokes, and sometimes girls to a degree, that you're not catching any hair underneath. So if you go too high, you're just going to catch your underarm hair, and that's not comfortable. Now I'm going to go over here. Do you want me to shave there, or just be manly and take it?
Yeah.
So I do a big anchor from basically the front of their chest to the mid part of their back. All right. For guys that sweat a fair bit, you might want to use the spray. You might want to use a 10 centimetre under wrap.
Spray, what do you mean?
Adhesive spray, just sticky spray that makes it stick a little bit easier. If they're a big sweater, or if you need to really sort of lock them down. So shoulders, I find anchors very important.
I find the students mess this up by just they never go low enough with those ankles.
Don't go low enough and go far too close, and even I've seen guys go over the nipples. And for guys and for girls, it is not nice. And I've seen them just go straight over the top, and it's brutal. Brutal. Now for guys in the scrum, sometimes around here they don't feel very comfortable, so you might actually even have to anchor just from there to there.
AFL's very much.
AFL much the same too, because they're doing a lot of overhead stuff, but scrummaging especially, a lot of stuff through here, it pulls a lot off here. But for a standard person, I'd anchor them down a little bit lower. So glenohumeral joint, if the guys are not up with their anatomy, obviously a big ball in socket, so we're basically trying to lock that ball into the socket to provide that stability. Where's it going to pop out? So if people are loose or unstable, where's it most commonly going to pop out? Anteriorly or through the front? Less so inferiorly, very occasionally posteriorly. If it's really anterior, guys tackling, missing the tackle, getting their arm twisted, landing on the ground. So it's potentially going to pop out the front. So we want to put most of our pressure through the front of the joint. So basically, like the MCL of the knee, it's basically like a little crisscross across the front of your joint. For someone who's a little bit more unstable, I might actually bring them forward a little bit, so it's a little bit going to be a little bit tighter through there. Most of the guys I'll strap down here. Occasionally, I'll have them with their arm up. So I start fairly low on that anchor, not too tight, but just putting a little bit of pressure up and around their shoulder, and I tend to go right over and finish. So it's a little bit of a locking strip. So as he goes back into abduction, external rotation, it's going to pull a fair bit, and that's going to be pretty tight around his arm. You really can't go any further than that, can you? So that's pretty tight, all right? So I don't need to go much tighter than that, but I need to just overlap that by a little bit. Wrap it around and make sure when you're doing these anchors they're a little bit lighter, that you're not cutting off bicep.
And again, we're not reefing on any bits of tape here, it's just set up positions, it's your taping job.
Now 3 or 4 there might be enough for him again. If he goes back into that position, that might be enough for him to stabilise. If he feels really loose through there, I might want to go one lower, so it really gives him a, just go a bit further out into range again. So it really gives him a bit more locking, but sometimes you don't need to do that, all right? Back down. Now that might be enough, and then you might just want to lock that off. But I tend to go just back the other way, just so you provide a little bit more stability for the joint. Do 2 or 3, just protecting the back of the joint. And then lock it all off. Go back and do your anchors. Anchors. And you can see, even for his shoulder, already going through half a roll of tape pretty quickly. Go back into your positions again, abduction, external rotation. So he can't get his arm a bit further back than that, so that's going to really stop him. Now that will loosen up a little bit, but that's going to really lock him from popping out through the front there. Some guys will find an overwrap around here might be a bit too constrictive, but I ask them if they want it, and then I'll just wrap them around there just to lock all that down.
I like that on everyone, probably 2 full circulars.
I tend to do it. Some guys don't like it, it feels a bit too restrictive, but if someone's a real loose shoulder, I might actually overwrap the whole joint. So I might actually start down below and then come up and over and around his shoulder and back onto itself and really lock him up to lock it all in. But that's pretty full on, but only for guys that are really, really unstable.
Or alternatively, if they just want something but they don't want the rigid, then that's a half interim measure as well.
Yep. Questions about that? So that's a standard sort of shoulder anterior stability strap. For girls, you can do obviously much the same. If you want to come right down below, you can, or if you want to just stop up sort of top of breast, you can. If you want to join to go through that, a high one. Is that pretty straightforward for everybody?
You're just taking that bottom anchor that's coming around.
And come up here. Yeah, and to do the final anchor, I might actually use the under wrap, like a 10 centimetre under wrap rather than the rigid, just because it sticks on a bit better. There and there. For an AC, much the same sort of tape. For your AC pad, I tend to use some adhesive foam, so cut a little window in it. Take the backing paper off. You can trim that around and make it a bit more uniform, but effectively put your AC joint in the middle of the hole, put another layer on top. So this is someone coming back from an AC sprain. Just provides a little bit of extra padding, like a ready-made ACE shoulder pad effectively, and then you're just basically strapping that on. So any pressure or force that gets there, it's just going to get dispersed through their joint rather than smack bang onto his bony prominence. Just a little bit more comfortable.
I asked them to keep that because that stuff's expensive. And
Yeah.
We'll use it for as long as it lasts.
So you can actually make that up.
Put a bit of cardboard on top of it, or
Yeah.
wrap tape around it so it's durable and lasts the season.
Yeah, so I normally wrap it up with tape the first time. Go all around it with tape and then put their name on it. So by the end of the day, it will go missing, and then you'll see someone's tape pad just resting on the ground, and you know it's theirs. So yeah, I'll wrap that up, and then I'll bring it to when they want to get strapped, strap it on.